Writing professional reports is one of the most important ways that you can communicate with your client, with your colleagues, and with any other stakeholders. In this video, I'm going to share with you the tools that I've used as an engineer and a consultant to write professional reports quickly. I'm often asked to write 30, 40, or 50-page reports in a matter of days. And I'm going to share with you in this video the tools that I've used to really communicate that information in those professional reports to clients and colleagues. My name's Chris, and on this channel, I like to share the tools like that I've used and developed over the years as an engineer and a consultant to upgrade my communications. So let's dive right into it. The first tool I want to share with you for writing professional reports, and if you stick around to the end, I'm going to go through step by step how to exactly use these. But the first tool that I like to use is the breadth first writing. The key to this tool is to first think about what the objective of your report is and who you're writing that report for. So what is the purpose of this report and who is your audience? Because this is going to drive how you do your headings and what sort of detail you put into your report and the next steps coming up. So to think about what objective you're delivering into your report, perhaps the objective has come from your audience, perhaps there's something else there. So I've found that there are three types of reports that I'm typically asked to write. That is the plan, the planning report, what sort of plan, what you're going to do, the progress report. So for example, if you're running a project, what's the progress and status of that project? And the results report. What is the outcome at the end of undertaking this work? So for each of those, you can have a different set of objectives in mind. Your plan, your report on a plan might want to communicate to your stakeholders an outline of which steps you're going to take and who's going to take them, what sort of team is involved. A progress report might be more focused on, say, key metrics that your project is performing against. Or your results might be focused on the outcomes of the task. What did you accomplish and how did you get there? So typically, I've found that these three types of report, the plan, the progress, and the results report, are the most common that I've found as an engineer and a consultant. So after thinking about your objective and your audience, the next step I like to do in this breadth-first writing approach is to then map out the headings through the document. So typically, I've found that there's an introduction, some sort of introduction to what the project is or what the task is, then an approach, how you're going to or how you have done or how you are doing whatever it is that you have. So if this is a project report, what you're planning on doing, what the progress is or what the results were at the end. Then there's an outcome. Now in a progress report, this could be what the status is. In a results report, this could be what you accomplished, what your outcome was. And then if there's any conclusion to what you've seen so far. So this could be, I've taken this one from a feasibility study I did recently, where the client was interested in not just the outcomes of the study that we did, but some sort of conclusive recommendations that they could implement early to do that. So our objective in this case was to come up with some recommendations for the client based on our approach, our outcome, and then any interim things as well. So our conclusion was to directly address the objectives despite the outcomes. So to combine the outcomes together into a set of conclusive recommendations that address the objective. So I like to do it this way because the conclusion then matches the objective, whereas the outcome matches the approach. And then introduction being the other heading to give you a bit of context. Because one of the considerations, when you're thinking about your audience, one of the considerations that I like to put in is to think about perhaps more people will be reading this than you think. So coming from a consultant background, a lot of my reports are about projects and studies that they might end up on the table of someone who may not understand why we've written this. So when I'm putting my name to a report, I want to make sure that anyone who picks up that report can at least understand the context that we've written it in. So that's why an introduction is important. The approach then is usually a step-by-step process of what we've done. I like to include maybe a flow chart in here or some sort of graphic that demonstrates step by step which actions we've taken or which actions we will take for this report or study, project, whatever it's for. Then to list out the outcome. So what happened at the end of that report? What happened at the end of that approach that we accomplished? What did we get done? What sort of results did we find? What did we discover? What are we reporting on? And then the conclusion is the opportunity to address the objectives that we put together. So I've sort of stolen the term breadth first from computer science, where I originally studied a computer science degree, where if you have a tree structure or graph structure like this, you go wide with all your work first and then go into the detail. So that's what we've done here. We've looked at the highest level first, the objective, then we've mapped out our headings underneath it, the introduction, approach, outcome, conclusion, and you might call these something different in your report. And now we look at starting to fill in some of the details within each of those. So I like to fill in the outcome first, because then I know, or perhaps the approach. I like to fill in the outcome or the approach first, depending on which one you know better, because then, and also depending on whether you're writing a plan, a progress report, or a results report, because then you can start thinking about how it comes together. And because this is doing the breadth of the document first, so after writing the headings and subheadings, look out for just brief details that you can include in, or maybe some simple graphics that summarize the points, because you don't want to go into too much detail at this stage while you're still sorting out the document. That's why I like to dive right into, say the outcome was section 4 of the report. I never like to write a report from start to finish. I like to dive right into the outcome or the approach, write that section first, then go back, write the introduction, go make sure I've got the objectives correct, write the conclusion. But I do, just on that point there, I do like to think first though, that I have the objectives in mind, even if I haven't written them down. So to focus first on the outcome, include just some brief detail, then some brief detail on the approach, some brief detail on the introduction, some brief detail on the conclusion, and any other sections in there that you might be required to report on. So for example, some reports are required to, let's say you're planning a project and you've got to have your project timeline in there. Well, that could be part of the approach, or it could be its own section, or it could be an outcome of this plan. So it depends on what your audience is expecting, and the depth does as well. The depth of this report depends on what your audience is expecting. Sometimes I've written reports where an audience says, or the client says, right, there's a 6-page limit, don't go over it. Other times, I've written reports for clients that love to be drowned in information and say, look, we got the consultant to write a 100-page report on this problem, and this is the evidence that the consultant's conclusions are correct, just by the length of the report and who was involved. So that's another good point, actually. Sometimes it's a good idea to write in the team that's delivering the report, some sort of organization structure or team biographies, and that can also go, while I've called it approach in this diagram here, it can be its own section about what team was involved in delivering the report. And also, one of the reports I like to write is for proposals, where you're proposing to put a project together. So sometimes the background of the team and company and people involved is also a good one, but I've tended to call that approach for simplifying it into this breadth first writing model. So what we've done, part of this breadth first, is to define our objective. Then we've defined each of our headlines and subheadings. We've put some detail in. Then after putting some brief detail in, it's to dive right into the detail and make sure you've got all that detail right. So again, I like to start with the approach or the outcome, but sometimes if you're having a bit of writer's block, it might be a good idea to start with the introduction, because the introduction will get you typing or writing very simply. Introducing a project, introducing the background to what you're writing about can be the easiest thing to do. I did one recently about a report on a particular incident with a train, and the introduction was simply talking about where the train is located, what is the context, why are we starting to study this? Why is it a problem? When did it happen? And that was the introduction, to give a bit of background to the report, to the study that we were putting together. And it was a very simple thing to read. Because it was an incident, I just took it from the newspaper. So the introduction can be a great way to start writing to get over writer's block before you dive right into detailing your approach or your outcome. I usually like to leave the conclusions to last, just in case I've changed some of the wording in the outcome. I like to keep the wording consistent between the approach, the outcome, and the conclusion to make sure that I'm using the correct terminology. I like to define the terminology that I'm using and then put it in correctly throughout the document. So if I like to put a word in, for example, in this train problem, I was calling it train control system instead of train control computer. I like to make sure that by putting that in the outcome, train control system, that it's consistent throughout the document. And then when the conclusion starts talking about train control systems, everyone knows what's going on. So I like to write the conclusion last. Not all reports have a conclusion, which is why I also like to start with the outcome. It's often, I've tried to make a distinction here between outcome and conclusion, but for some reports, that's a distinction without a difference, and your outcome will be your conclusion. So these also don't have to strictly be the headings in the document. They can be subheadings. There could be different components that you include in there. So the next tool that I like to use to put a report together is the formatting. A professional report should have excellent formatting. Now, I did another video on actually how to set up this formatting in Word, so please check out the link in the description below, and you can see step by step how I've gone through to apply the key elements of formatting into a Word document. Now that includes things like the logo in the top left-hand corner, or logo in the header. We've got our document title, we've got our page number, but we've also got headings, subheadings, figures, more subheadings, tables, bulleted lists, and all sorts of other things that can really make a professional report stand out. I'd recommend paying attention to the fonts, the bolding, the italics, captions, all those sorts of things, figures, where it really can upgrade your professional report. So starting with just the basic Word formatting, I mean, everyone does that. If you want to make your report look more professional, just simply change it. Change it to something else and keep it consistent, but also keep it simple. If you're interested in how I use formatting for professional reports, please check out that link in the description below, or hit subscribe and YouTube will suggest it to you eventually. So formatting is the second key tool that I use to write professional reports quickly. I like to set up that formatting in one report so that I can copy and paste the document and then rewrite for each one. So my work process there is to set up the formatting in a blank document and then copy that document as a template and then start writing in the copy. So that every time I've got the professional format ready to go. And I like to use the word styles. So in that video, I've gone through how to set up the styles in Word to make sure that it's consistent every time. So the third tool that I've learned for really getting these reports communicated to the audience, to the key audience quickly, is this actually comes from the Navy. It's called bottom line up front, or BLUF. Bottom line up front. I took this on from the US Navy, where they have a philosophy, a principle of saying, what's the bottom line? Give it to me first. Bottom line up front. And so I found that after a lot of people tend to write in, they like to set up the point. They like to say, well, here's what we did, and here's something else that happened, and here are a few things that happened, and this is the result of all that. I like to say, this is the result, full stop. We did this, this, and this to get that result. Bottom line up front. I was also watching a YouTube video recently about how to evaluate a manuscript for a book. And the editor for this publisher house said that you can usually tell whether a manuscript is going to be approved for a book just by reading the first paragraph. Does the author get to the point straight away, or does the author waffle on and put in a lot of needless information before setting up the point? So bottom line up front will get you your report read, will get the important points across, and might also get you published one day. So this is the third key tool that I like to use when I'm writing a professional report, to put in bottom line up front. And I like to use that perhaps in the more detailed stages of perhaps after I've gone into a lot of detail from that breadth first writing approach. Then I like to go through and pick out the key points there and put them in as far up as I can in the heading or just below the heading. Sometimes some reports require an executive summary. Executive summary is exactly this tool, bottom line up front. The executive summary, the summary for the executives, wants to get straight to the point of what you did and what the outcome was. So that's where bottom line up front has been applied as a tool elsewhere. However, you can do it within every section of your report. So within your approach, what's the bottom line of your approach? Up front. What are the key steps that you took? For your outcomes, or what are your key outcomes? Bottom line up front, put that right under the heading for the section on outcomes. Now, I'm going to run through step by step how I write reports, but those are the three key tools that I use. Breadth first writing, professional formatting, and bottom line up front. So stepping through that step by step, let's say I had a blank report to begin with. Where do I start? So step by step, the first thing I'll do is apply that breadth first writing and look at what are the objectives and the audience. The first level there, thinking about the objectives and the audience. So what sort of plan are we writing and who's going to read it? What sort of report are we writing and who's going to read it? Is it going to be a plan? Is it going to be a status report? Is it an outcome report? So, and then who are we writing that for? Is it going to be read by someone who has a great deal of technical knowledge? Is it going to be read by the public or a politician? Sometimes you need to pay a lot more attention to the professionalism of a report if it's going to be out in the public eye and read by politicians and scrutinized by the public in general. So after figuring out the objectives and the audience, I like to put in the headings. So this is the main headings, the main sections in the report, and then the subheadings that I think are going to go in. I'm always free to change these later on. I never set these fixed in stone. However, this is also a good opportunity to collaborate on the report. Sometimes I can probably produce about a 30-page report in 2 days if I've got a lot of the input information ready to go. However, of course, some of this information should be outsourced, some of the writing should be given to colleagues, shared amongst the team. And once you've set out your subheadings, this could be a good opportunity to spread it out amongst the team. Now, one word of caution though, if you're looking to spread it out, is that the tone of voice can change when different people are writing. So when I like to have one person be responsible for overall writing of the report, putting the tone together, but a lot of the research or the figures or the tables or the data that goes into the report can be outsourced to other people. So maybe I'll ask a colleague to write some bullet points on what should go into this section or put a nice drawing in there as well. But then I'll actually write the whole section based on the information they gave me. Then I can take advantage of my fast typing speed while someone else did the important information, gathered all that important information to go into the report. So I'd recommend that for collaborating on a report rather than just passing a different section to someone else and saying, please write that. I find that no section of a report can be written in isolation and it should flow together. Otherwise, people are going to give up reading on it. These tools are all about communicating your report so that people don't give up reading it halfway through, because that's what this channel is about, upgrading your communication. So after the headings, I like to fill in some brief detail and easy graphics. Sometimes you'll find that there are some graphics that can just jump straight into your report with very minimal formatting that really summarize the section that the graphic is going in. So this could be recycling a flowchart from another graphic or a good graph that really represents what that section's about. And so putting these in now gives you a chance you can then look at that as you're writing the detail later on, but also put in some brief details, perhaps some bullet points. Bring back the information that other people had researched for you if you decided to outsource that, and then fill that into the subsections here. So then I like to focus on, well, what was the outcome? So the fourth step in this process is I like to write in what was the outcome of the report. And I've said outcome here because some reports don't have a conclusion, but if it did, I'd be looking at the outcome and the conclusion in this fourth step. So then the fifth step is to make sure that the formatting is correct. So have I put the logo in the heading? Have I got the correct date and page number and document title? Is the correct heading style applied? Is the text the right size? So I like to do this now before I write the detail in the sixth step so that I can modify the formatting a little bit to emphasize some of the points, so that I can get the formatting right so that when I do go through and write, that it's ready to apply to the text as I'm writing. Now, the thing I've got in mind here is like, let's say you're typing out a paragraph, but it's getting long and boring. One thing I like to do is, part of the bottom line up front, make sure that the first sentence gives the answer in the paragraph, gives the answer to whatever the reader wants to hear, and then the rest of the paragraph goes into more detail. But sometimes I like to bold that sentence. Or sometimes I like to apply lists or bullet point lists or numbered lists. And making sure that formatting is right at this stage before you go into detail means that it's really quick to write in that list, to apply that style from Word to the list as you go. So I highly recommend getting the formatting right now before you go into the detail. So step 6 being the detail. So earlier we put in some basic graphics and brief details, and now it's actually to write the report. So because we've done all that preparation work, this should be nice and quick. The limit here is your typing speed. I like to set up tables, put in complicated graphics, Tables and graphics and lists are probably the key way that I'm able to write 30 pages in 2 days or 40 or 50 pages really quickly, because tables and graphics summarize information in a nice presentation and take up a lot of pages. Often, you know, picture's worth 1,000 words. Often for a limited page report, like say the client requested no more than 6 pages, first thing I'll do is put in a graphic, because a graphic just summarizes perfectly hundreds of words into one simple part of the page. If your page is limited in space, a graphic can be represented horizontally or vertically to really capture whatever point you're trying to put across. So that's what I like to do in the 6th step, to put the detail together. And then finally, at the end, summarize. This is the bottom line up front. For each section in the report, I like to go through and put a summary right under the heading of the section, so that each section, the first thing someone reads is the summary. So I like to think about this from the client's perspective. I give them the report and they pick it up and say, okay, I'm going to skim through this. I don't have much time to read it. I just want the valuable information. So they go to the heading that they're interested in, and there's the valuable information straight away. If the client is motivated to see more detail, they can keep reading and do so. I like to give my clients that option. So summarizing using that bottom line upfront tool. So they are the 3 tools and how to apply them that I use to really communicate reports to clients and colleagues, and to make it easy for them to understand. That's what I like to do on this channel, is share the tools that I've developed over the years as an engineer and a consultant to upgrade communications. I believe communication is so important, especially these days, that everything we do, every interaction we have with someone else should be clear and not miscommunicated. I have found too often too many problems at work, too many consulting problems can simply be solved by better communication. So hopefully that's what I've given you today. If you have any questions about this, please leave them in the comments below. Please also check out that video on formatting Word reports if that's what you're interested in. Hit subscribe, because I release more videos like this often about how to upgrade the communications that you're using with your colleagues and your clients, and hopefully to give you a better value in the workplace. So hit subscribe, follow along. I'll be releasing more videos like that soon.